Hey, welcome. Happy Monday. It is Monday, isn't it?
It is Monday.
Last time I heard.
Yeah.
23.
23.
Can you believe that? Where has the summer gone, huh?
We are almost through October.
I can't believe it.
I know.
There's a passage of time, folks, as they get to you as much as it does to me. I can't believe we're almost coming up on Thanksgiving.
I know.
And they're starting to run Christmas ads on the television.
Well, that starts in July, so
Gabby said, please, no more. All right. The president has a warning for Republicans in Congress. Well, we've been given that too. He says to them, pass a tax bill, or you'll pay a heavy price in next year's midterm elections.
Well, the president wants to cut tax rates for businesses and individuals. He wants Republicans to move quickly and get it done before the end of the year. Heather Sells has the story.
President Trump warned House Republicans on Sunday that failing to pass tax reform would mean failing at the polls next year. And he is stepping up the pressure for a tax bill, saying it's what the people want.
It'll be the biggest cuts ever in the history of this country. And I think that there's tremendous appetite, there's tremendous spirit for it.
The president and Republicans are desperate for a win. They control both chambers of Congress, but have yet to repeal Obamacare or pass any significant legislation. Many in the party fear an all-out revolt by voters next year if tax reform fails. To that end, House Speaker Paul Ryan says he wants to pass a revised Senate budget bill this week and ultimately accept the Senate tax plan. That would avoid negotiations between a House and Senate version that could drag out the process.
We're hearing now that the House may go ahead and either take the Senate amendments or move very quickly to accept the Senate amendments, and we may save as many as 10 or 12 legislative days, which is a big deal.
The president promoted the plan in a USA op-ed piece this weekend, citing an out-of-control tax code that has nearly tripled in length since the last tax reform in 1986. It's 2,650 pages, plus another 70,000 pages of forms and instructions. The president also cited tax foundation figures that show that taxes cost Americans more out of pocket than housing, clothing, and food combined. On Capitol Hill, deficit hawks are worried that the president's tax cuts will add even more to the country's $20 trillion debt. They want to pay for them by cutting deductions or with tough spending cuts. But the president insists an expanding economy will save the day.
If we pick up 1 point on GDP, that's $2.5 trillion, if you think of it. 2.5, it more than pays for everything.
The president is pushing hard because he promised tax reform on the campaign trail and wants to deliver now, not just for the future of his party, but because he believes it's important for the country. Heather Sells, CBN News.
Well, folks, there's no question that this, remember Jimmy Carter used that colloquialism, it's a disgrace to the human race. He was speaking of the tax code way back when he was running for president, long, long time ago. It is a disgrace. The way the Byzantine, maze of exceptions that's in there. But this is going to, it's a question of whose ox gets gored. And on this baby, they're going to take away the deduction for state and local taxes. And that's going to hit the very high-tax states like New York and California. They don't like it. Well, in a sense, tough luck. Maybe that'll get those states to reform their tax code. And the other thing that's interesting is that Steve Bannon, the guru who helped the president win the election, has gone off on a tear. He says, I'm going to start defeating Republican senators who don't toe the line. Well, that sounds good, but at the same time, it's a bad policy. And the president has now come out in favor of some of the sitting senators, and he's doing the right thing. They need to elect people, not make statements. You get a whole bunch of non-electable candidates, and you haven't accomplished a thing. And so I just wonder about these people that go off on these tangents, try to disrupt something and make a, quote, statement. We don't need statement. We need people in office. You remember the old B-52 bombers? Those things were there in World War II. How old is that? If you go back to World War II, you're talking about 60 years, 70 years.
More than 60 years.
Yeah.
More like 70.
They're older than most people, and these are this is our nuclear bomb force in the Air Force.
That's scary.
Well, they're thinking, what if there's a nuclear war? We've got to be ready. Well, let's get that story.
That's right, Pat. As you mentioned, the Air Force is preparing to put nuclear-armed B-52s back on a 24-hour ready alert if it becomes necessary. That hasn't been done since 1991, by the way, at the end of the Cold War. General David Goldfein, the Air Force Chief of Staff, tells Defense One that the order hasn't been given and that the move isn't planning for a specific event, but more for the reality of the global situation today. He points out that there are other countries who, by the way, have nuclear capability and that the U.S. needs to be prepared. Pat, is your sense that this is about sending a message to Pyongyang, North Korea?
I don't think we ought to send messages. This is the wrong kind of message. Nuclear war is a horrible thing to contemplate. And we have an enormous arsenal. Russia has an enormous arsenal. And North Korea has, you know, maybe 6 bombs. I don't know what they've got. They don't have a lot, but it doesn't take one to devastate a city. And the Iranians have bombs, and at least they're trying to get them. Pakistan is nuclear. India is nuclear. And to think that nations will start throwing these things back and forth at each other, each one takes out a city. The cost of life is enormous. And I'm not too keen on rattling the nuclear saber. I think, you know, we had what was called MAD, Mutual Assured Destruction. That seemed to hold us in line because the Russians knew we could demolish their country, and we knew they could demolish our country. So mutually assured destruction, MAD, kept everything in stability. But with Iran out there and these crazies in North Korea, who knows what? And to gear up these B-52s and these ancient, oh man, those things are so old.
Well, they're old, but on the other hand, I mean, isn't that just a wisdom to be current, to be
well, I think
capable?
Make our nuclear forces current, absolutely. But surely we can haul them in a B-1 or B-2 bomber instead of a B-52. All right, George, what's next?
Okay, Pat, we move to a part of the world that always seems to be in conflict. We're talking about the Middle East, where there are two allies who are pitted against each other. It's happening in northern Iraq, where Iraqi forces worked together with Shiite militias backed by Iran to drive out the Kurds. That all sounds confusing. Trust me, it is. They are trying to drive them out of the rich oil town of Kirkuk. As my colleague Chris Mitchell explains, the move represents a major blow to the Kurdish regional government, a setback for U.S. interests in the region, and a boost for Iran's goal to dominate the Middle East.
After the fall of Kirkuk, thousands of Kurds demonstrated outside the U.S. consulate in Erbil. They protested the lack of U.S. response to the Iraqi army and Shiite militias' military campaign against the Kurdish government.
It's an astonishing coup, in a certain sense, by the Iraqi government, supported by the Iranians, a very major blow to the Kurds. We're not quite sure where this will end, but certainly right now the Kurds are in retreat.
Middle East analyst Jonathan Spire explained Iran is the power behind the military campaign of the past several days.
The Iranian role was very prominent and openly declared. That is to say, the leader of the Quds Force of the Revolutionary Guards Corps, General Qasem Soleimani, was in Kirkuk in the days preceding the Iraqi and Iranian military move.
Before the offensive, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu told CBN News Iran's goal is to build a Shiite Muslim arc of power in the Middle East.
What they want, you know, from Tehran to Tartus, you know, from Iran to the Mediterranean, they want this Shiite arc to colonize it and control it. And everyone's concerned. Get this, they're trying to import Shiite militias that are now trying to choke the Kurds in Kirkuk.
Because of the close partnership with Iraqi forces and Shiite militias, those militias used U.S. weapons for the offensive against Kirkuk.
And we saw a situation in which the Shia militias were operating the state-of-the-art Abrams tanks, the best US-made tanks in the world, against Kurdish forces who had nothing like the same level of anti-tank capacity. I think from the point of view of the US taxpayer, I wonder how the US taxpayer would feel to know that, you know, his or her hard-earned dollars have basically gone towards equipping a fervently anti-Western Shia Islamist militia force.
The Kurds proved the U.S.'s best ally in the war against ISIS. During the recent referendum for Kurdish independence, retired U.S. General Jay Garner told CBN News how the Kurds can be a vital U.S. ally against Iranian expansion.
Strategically, this is one of the best locations in this part of the Middle East for us to have an ally. And we could have a strong U.S. ally. That's why the Iranians are against us. They don't want a strong U.S. ally on their border, which is what the Kurds are. It would be like a carrier stationed in this part of the Middle East, a U.S. carrier.
One of the few countries to stand with the Kurds has been Israel. CBN News has learned Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has been calling world leaders to stand with the Kurds. And Israel's intelligence minister said the Kurds must be protected from extermination. Some experts believe how the U.S., the world's only superpower, responds in the next few days and weeks may well determine the future of the Kurdish people. Chris Mitchell, CBN News, Jerusalem.
Thanks, Chris. Pat, how should the United States respond to our strongest ally in the region?
We should get with the Kurds right away. They have set up a wonderful democratic state out of Erbil. They are strong allies of the United States. They are strong believers in freedom. And they had a prosperous little country, and now the government of Iraq is trying to exterminate them, and they're doing so on orders from Tehran. That's what's so sickening. And the fact that President Trump, who is good on these things, has not moved on it, I don't know why. I cannot understand it. But if there's ever a time to let the White House know you're feeling, it's right now. Because these are wonderful people, and as General Garner said so poignantly, it's like having an aircraft carrier right in the middle of the conflict in the Middle East. We've got one strong ally over there, and that's Israel. The Kurds were another one. And I thought they deserved their own nation. They should have a Kurdistan as that part of Iraq. They should have Kurdistan as the part of Syria they're liberating now from ISIS. And they should have a Kurdistan as the part of Turkey. And I guess the Turks don't like it, but tough luck. The Turks are becoming a nasty dictatorship, and Erdogan is a vicious thug. And why would we, cater to him and mistreat the Kurds? It beggars comprehension. I mean, if the last administration did this, I'd say, well, okay, they want to destroy America anyhow, and this is in keeping. The President Trump says, I want to make America strong. Well, you do it by getting strong allies, and the Kurds are a strong ally, and it's time to get with it. So, Mr. President, I'm for you. Please get America on the side of these people and against Iran, who wants to destroy them and us. George.
Pat, there's been another attack on conservatives here in the United States, this time on Twitter. Critics say online giant is trying to restrict the pro-life movement's speech on its platform. We saw it a few days ago when Republican Congresswoman Marsha Blackburn posted a campaign video criticizing Planned Parenthood. And now more cases are coming to light, as my colleague Jenna Browder brings us that story from Washington.
I'm 100% pro-life.
This is the political ad called into question.
I fought Planned Parenthood, and we stopped the sale of baby body parts. Thank God.
Republican Congresswoman Marsha Blackburn talking abortion and her pro-life views. Twitter blocked the ad, refusing to let the campaign pay to promote it. It called Blackburn's words about Planned Parenthood inflammatory.
And this isn't the first time the tech giant has tried to silence the pro-life movement.
It turns out there's a history.
Twitter's been waging a war against pro-life speech for a while now.
Lila Rose, president of Live Action, says Twitter has blocked her organization's entire ad account for the past year.
So that means Live Action's totally prohibited from doing any pro-life advertising on Twitter. This is especially concerning because we are the biggest social media platform for the pro-life movement.
CBN News reached out to Twitter executives about Live Action, but never heard back. The company did issue a statement in the case of Blackburn and decided to back off its decision due to backlash. While we initially determined that a small portion of the video used potentially inflammatory language, after reconsidering the ad in the context of the entire message, we believe that there is room to refine our policies around the issue.
Our supporters are furious.
Rose wishes the company would do the same for Live Action.
But regardless of whether you're left and right, you can be pro-life, and even more so, you can promote speech and say that speech is something that's valuable, a crucial part of our political and social discourse, and we shouldn't be shutting down or suppressing the speech of those we disagree with.
In Washington, Jenna Browder, CBN News.
Thanks, Jenna. All 5 living former presidents came together Saturday across party lines to raise money for the victims of the hurricanes that have hit the U.S. in recent months. And President Trump sent a video greeting. The famous singer Lady Gaga released a photo of herself with the 5 former presidents. You can see that. Well, it went viral. The effort raised $31 million. It was emceed by country music star Lee Greenwood and featured performances by Lady Gaga and gospel artist Yolanda Adams. Operation Blessing is still on the ground helping people in Texas and Florida. And OB is working to bring safe water to Puerto Rico with units that turn the salty seawater around the island into safe drinking water. OB is also working with the AFT, the American Federation of State, County and Municipal Employees, and the Hispanic Federation to launch Operation Agua, crowdsourced contributions to provide reliable source of safe drinking water to families across Puerto Rico, including purchasing and distributing 100,000 individual water filtration systems for households and classrooms. OB working across this country and in Puerto Rico, Pat.
They love us in Puerto Rico because, as the mayor said, we didn't call for them. They just showed up because there was a need. And Operation Blessing just shows up. They don't have to be invited. They come to help. And here's what Operation Blessing wants to do now. Operation Agua is called. They're going to have distribute 100,000 individual water filtration systems. It's been working nonstop to help residents receive safe drinking water. They've got 8 reverse osmosis water filtration units going. They have 9 water desalination units, and they're running 4 chlorine generators 24/7, and each producing 150 gallons of chlorine, and the chlorine, of course, is used for purifying the water. It's probably the most significant charity right at this moment helping Puerto Rico because we care. We care about the people in Puerto Rico. We care about people who suffer. We care about people in Texas. We care about people in Florida, and those who, especially those in Louisiana, who we've helped because of the onslaught of that awful hurricane there. We're doing everything we can to help. And we'd ask you to participate because Operation Blessing needs your help. But it's one of the finest charities in the world. It's one of the most efficient charities in the world. And it's doing major, in terms of water, it is becoming the source of water knowledge, water activity. And when you look at chlorine generation, we're producing thousands and thousands of gallons of chlorine, which purifies the water. And we are doing everything we can, desalinization, reverse osmosis, all these things, set up community-wide water systems. So here's the number, 1-800-700-7000, or you can go to cbn.com. This is a most important time, and those people in Puerto Rico are hurting. Let's help them because we care.